think they're still what we call state inspected. I don't think
They are.
federal. Yeah.
They haven't gone USDA yet,
Kind of
but
wanting to go federal, but
they are
haven't.
going there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, the state has to sign off on that happening.
Oh, okay.
It's not easy.
No, it's not. So, all right, what do we got to work with? So you will find that all three of the species that we work with on larger animals, we always kind of think in terms of like primal cuts. We call them primals or wholesale cuts or whatever like that. And again, Heather's more artistic than I am. If I had drawn a pig like that, it would not look like that because I'm not very artsy. So anyway, so in pigs though, it's different than it is in beef and in lamb in particular, because in pigs, we talk about the primals of pork as there being two major primals in the shoulder itself, okay? And you can see the diagram, you can see the line behind the head, that's where the head came off. Okay, this area below the head on that bottom part of the cheek, literally, that gets left on the carcasses ideally because this is what we call the pork jowl. Okay, and pork jowl can be used in a variety of different ways. It can be used for processing, for sausage making. It can also be cured and smoked, similar to what you might do with bacon, and it is delicious. Okay, it is fairly high in fat content.
Hog
Okay?
jowl is also used in a lot of different sausages.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So then we go back, we go kind of behind this forearm, if you will, and you'll hear this referred to as being a 2 or a 3 rib shoulder or whatever like that, but literally you're kind of making a cut that's kind of right behind the forearm of the pig, kind of right at the very back edge of it. And then we try to do a lot of our cuts in a way that we're trying to cut in straight lines and straight angles, and that's so that as we go through and we make more cuts, whether we're using a knife or whether we're using a saw, so that we can be fairly consistent in our thickness, and we don't get down, we're cutting, you know, things at an inch, and we get down at the end, all of a sudden we've got a wedge, we've got a triangle that we've got to deal with. Now when we do that, we find other ways to work our way around it, okay? So anyway, this part up here will be called what's commonly referred to as the Boston butt or the butt shoulder, okay, or also known as the blade shoulder. The blade shoulder has most of the scapula in it, okay? That's why it's called the blade shoulder. It's different terminology, blade shoulder, Boston butt, butt shoulder, whatever. Okay, this part down here, which is also part of the shoulder, but is also still what we'd call a major primal, is called the arm shoulder, aka picnic shoulder, okay? Okay, so that'll come out. Now, when we describe these as having these kind of 4 major wholesale cuts, we're talking about those which are primarily delivering lean muscle as, you know, as an edible tissue more so, and that'll become, I'll clarify that here in a moment. So this whole area from this point behind the shoulder all the way back here to just in front of the back leg or the ham or the pelvic limb, whatever you would call it, this area up here is the loin, okay? This whole strip through here is the loin, all right? Goes all the way, all right? And then back behind that, of course, is then we've got the pelvic limb or the ham or the fresh, you'll hear it called fresh leg, you'll hear it called a ham, even though it's not been cured and manufactured into ham yet, it can still be called a ham. Semantics, deal with it. Okay, and so that's your other major primal lean cut, 4 lean cuts of pork.
I want to point something out too.
Yeah.
So when you go in to start tonight, your first thing you're going to have to do is inspect the carcass. As you can see right here, there is some material left behind on this ham, and over here as well. You need to cut that out.
Excellent point.
Okay, we don't wash it off, we don't hose it off, we cut it away, and we immediately sanitize the knife to touch that area as well. Okay, so that is a rule of thumb we have to do whenever we inspect for any brown, green, or white.
Yep, brown, green, white, or fibrous are the 4 things that inspectors look for that they don't want to see on a carcass. And again, you can't wash off contamination. When you wash, you might get rid of what you can see. You have also just spread the contamination. So as Paul said, that's a good thing for you to do, is just go through and just make, you know, cut around it, cut with some clearance, and get it off of there, okay? And you're going to want to do that That's literally where it probably came into contact with like a part of a gambrel that had some grease, even though it would be considered to be an edible grease. Nobody wants that on their product. So just trim it off. You can see there's some other area up in here. And again, just try not, you don't have to go really deep, just try to slice and go underneath it and just kind of follow it around and take a little time.
And keep in mind, Source does a good job, but
Yes, they do.
you have to inspect the carcass anyways. I took a temperature of all three when they came in, and I wrote that on our invoice for what the temperatures were for those animals, and they were around 35, 36 degrees, so they were good to go. If they're out,
I was gonna say, carcass inspection is literally like in our HACCP plans. So
Yep.
as we start following those more thoroughly.
right, so before we start anything, we have to do that.
The thickest part, so usually within the hand.
Yeah. And you're kind of looking for like an internal temperature. You're going to get really the temperature, the best representation of proper chilling. You're going to a deep portion and trying to get to that.
And that is where I did it, by the way.
Yep. Yep. So, okay, so those are the four major lean, what I call the lean cuts, and then we've also got this bad boy out here. It's not called a lean cut, it is the belly. Okay? The belly we use for the manufacture of bacon, among other products. And so we're going to pull that off, but that's not in that, kind of that umbrella group of the four lean cuts, but that is this strip through here, and that's going to include parts. When we pull this off, we're going to pull off part of this flank with it. We're going to make a cut on the inside of this edge of the loin up all the way up to here and separate that off. Okay, that can also be used to make what we call side pork and be used for a number of different products. Okay. Other things we've got, this fat here, and this is very common practice for a lot of our small processors in particular. They will leave this, what is called leaf lard or leaf fat, inside the carcass. When you start out, this is kind of affixed tightly to the internal of the inside of the abdomen here, and you literally kind of get it loose and you just kind of pull it up and free it up. And it's good that they did it while the animal was still hot, still live temperature and all that, because this pulls up a lot easier at that point than it comes off later after it's chilled. Okay, so what we will do is we will go ahead and just pull that the rest of the way out. That again is leaf fat, leaf lard, it's commonly referred to. That gets rendered down very often to be used for lard. We've also got inside here, we've got a kidney. Okay. And so now the kidney, in the case of pigs, is shaped literally just like ours. Okay, it is a single lobe kidney. They made a cut through there. They don't have to do that. The inspector doesn't have to do that, but some inspectors choose to do that to take a look at the inside surface. But in the case of kidneys, most of the time they'll be just still wholly, intact. They do come, they've got a little capsule around them. They'll take that off to expose the kidney. And they just do a visual observation just to make sure it doesn't have anything that looks like it's got a scarred, what you'll sometimes see is kind of a bulb, a little fluid-filled bulb on there if it had a bit of a challenge in its urinary tract. And so that can kind of come up in there. So that's a kidney. Okay. All right. Now, what we've also still got here is we've got a muscle portion here that it's not a bad idea to trim off to be salvaged. We're not trimming this off to discard it. This is part of what's left of what's called in beef, we call it the hanging tender. You can call it the same thing in pigs if you want to. This is the bigger portion of this that's remaining is probably on the other side if it was left. But this we will go ahead and trim off. And what you want to do is just kind of come in just underneath it. Don't dive down like that, because right underneath here is a muscle that we really enjoy called the pork tenderloin. Okay, it's a very, very tender muscle, a very lean muscle, but it's also a very, very tender muscle. And so when you start cutting to take something off the outside, like strip some more of this fat off, you want to be very careful and not get into that tenderloin that lies underneath there. The tenderloin starts right up here at the beginning of essentially the abdominal cavity, and it gets larger and given all the way back toward the pelvic limb, and it kind of ends back in here. It gets wrapped by another muscle or so. And so anyway, that's the tenderloin. Don't mess it up. Nobody will like you if you cut their tenderloin. So anyway, so part of this diaphragm, by the way, is what it is. It's part of the It facilitates digestion because it's part of what's called the diaphragm. It's part of the diaphragm. Is this? So you've got kind of two parts of diaphragm back here. You've got this part that's called the hanging tender, or that part that kind of goes up and down and pulls on the diaphragm to pull it back and forth to facilitate respiration or breathing. And then we also got this part in here that's also the it's called the outside skirt, is one term for it. In beef anyway, we call it that, but that's part of the that's also part of the diaphragm that again separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity, and on and on. So anyway,
So that outside skirt on beef is what you find with a lot of Spanish-style grilling, barbecue, and things like that. So it's the most tender one is the outside skirt. The inside skirt is not as tender, so keep that in mind when you start thinking about skirt steak for beef. And so outside skirt's going to be the tender one, inside skirt not so tender.
now, and by the way, just for reference, this muscle right in here is what is called the inside skirt. Okay, so the outside skirt, inside. And honestly, I kind of struggled for a long time why they call one the inside and outside. They didn't ask me. Somebody labeled it a long time ago. Not my call. But anyway, so this is the outside skirt, it's called. I guess it's because it actually kind of sticks away from the wall of the body, I guess. This is tucked up nice and tight there, okay? Transverse abdominis. Sorry, I got to get that in.
He had to slip his Latin in.
I had to slip that in there, that's right. Okay, so we're going to separate off, and so again, we try to do things in straight cuts, and I told you we try to do everything so it's square and symmetrical and all that. We're trying to do that we're trying to cut with symmetry and squareness something that is purely not square. Okay, so we're gonna violate a few of those rules right here off